Republican strategist Ford O'Connell. Ford, obviously Iowa and New Hampshire, worlds apart, but Trump's still dominating the polls there, of course. But is he vulnerable if he doesn't make any changes to his get-out-the-vote operations in every single state that remains in the GOP primary?
Well, let's remember this. This is a must-win for Donald Trump in New Hampshire. You cannot have the Trump balloon of inevitability, have two holes poked in it over a 2-week span. Unfortunately, Donald Trump is cheap. Yes, I said cheap, and he's not going to invest in mobilization. Anyone who knows anything knows that you could have all the celebrity and all the message in the world, but if you can't turn out the voters, you could have a real problem. I still think Trump is going to win New Hampshire, but if he doesn't win New Hampshire, the Trump train has been derailed.
Stephen, we're learning a lot about the ground game here. Are you somewhat surprised to hear how important it still is, considering how much Donald Trump has been able to dominate earned media this campaign?
No, I'm not. You know, ground game has always been a big deal of caucuses in particular, but also primaries and elections. And, you know, look, Trump is a CEO. You can't be a CEO these days, not a successful one anyway, unless you're really a cost cutter and trying to wring as much out of your operation as possible, spending the least amount. Ground game is not the place to do it, though. And I kind of agree with Ford that I think he's still going to win New Hampshire, but Rubio is coming on fast, I should say. And he's really got to be concerned that if he plays this a little bit too stingy, that Rubio is going to sneak up on him in New Hampshire like Cruz did in Iowa.
Well, if he asks Ted Cruz, he'll say that he's a little rattled. Let's take a listen to this. We can talk more, Ford. Hold on.
Donald Trump is very rattled right now. He told the entire world he was going to win Iowa, and then he didn't win.
All right, Ford, let's start with you. It seems like Cruz is really getting a little annoying, or says that he's really getting annoyed with the position that he's in right now. Either he's annoyed or he's annoyed with Trump, but anyway, he's going on the attack. What would you say, Ford?
He's absolutely going on the attack, and he's happy to go on the attack. You have to understand what Donald Trump's strategy is in New Hampshire. He basically is going to call Cruz a low-down, dirty cheat so he can dominate the media narrative and in true Super Bowl fashion basically play prevent defense and try to run out the clock. Cruz is happy to play this game because the three governors have been knocking Rubio around like a piñata, and if this whole conversation with Trump is dominating the media narrative, Marco Rubio may slip on by. And for Ted Cruz to win the nomination, Marco Rubio doesn't have to go down first. Donald Trump does.
This is true. I think Marco Rubio is striking the right tone, though, in all his responses, trying to take the high road here. And he looks a lot more presidential than the rest of those establishment candidates that are attacking him, Stephen. Marco Rubio is right up there in the polls. Donald Trump is, I guess, I just saw a new WMUR poll that came out. Marco Rubio continues to climb, and Ted Cruz continues to fall. But does anybody who beats Ted Cruz in New Hampshire really come out of this a winner?
I think he does. And I think the thing that people have to remember here is you have the two outsider non-establishment candidates, Trump and Cruz, and you have all the establishment that is now working to get behind Marco Rubio. I think that's just going to continue. If he has a strong showing in New Hampshire, he's really the one that both Cruz and Trump should be worried about. I'm worried about him as a Hillary supporter. He's probably of the three, the one that I'm most concerned about. He's, I think, the one who would appeal to the most amount of voters, even though I don't think he's any less conservative, really, than Cruz. But I think he's the one to watch, and I think they're just going to let him slip on by.
Let me say, John, you asked a very good question. Does beating Ted Cruz get you anywhere? If you're Christie, Kasich, or Bush, the answer is no. You have to run faster than Marco Rubio, and if Rubio finishes higher than you, guess what? Go home.
Yeah, and it does seem somewhat surprising how quickly the party seems to be coalescing around Marco Rubio, at least just in the last day. It does seem like he's getting a lot of, if not direct support, but some indirect support from people who might be rooting for him or don't want to necessarily seem like they are rooting for him.
Right, but then you do have Rick Santorum endorsing him, but not being able to really say why necessarily. He can't list an accomplishment that he did, but he's basically, I think he's just endorsing him because he thinks he's the best chance that he has about going against Clinton. Was that a response, Ford?
No, what I didn't hear
okay.
the question. The point is yes, Santorum is backing Marco Rubio because as of today, he thinks he's the most electable, and you're going to be able to keep the most people in the House and the Senate. So yes, Rick Santorum is actually taking one for the team. You may call that an establishment pick, but remember what establishment really stands for because no one's able to define it.
Right.
It means you want to win in November.
Especially nobody knows what it means now.
Right.
What the
Too
word
early to
establishment
tell.
means.
All right, Ford, Stephen, stick around. We still have a lot more to talk about. As Republicans work to prove who's the true conservative, Democrats spar over who's the most progressive. Coming up, we'll take a look at who's progressing more with voters and what we can expect during tonight's Democratic debate. Welcome back to Newsmax Now. Last night's Democratic town hall was just a taste of what's to come in tonight's Democratic debate, and one topic or word took center stage.
Progressive. I am a progressive.
She is just not progressive.
Senator Sanders has set himself up to be the gatekeeper on who's a progressive.
I do not know any progressive who has a super PAC and takes $15 million from Wall Street.
I'm not going to let that bother me.
Progress this discussion and bring in our roundtable. Rejoining us is Democratic strategist Stephen Lesser and Republican strategist Ford O'Connell. Thanks for sticking around, gentlemen. Both candidates struggled at moments during last night's town hall when Clinton was asked about her enormous speaking fees. Here's what she had to say.
I told them what I thought. I answered questions.
But did you have to be paid $675,000?
Well, I don't know. That's what they offered. So.
Now, according to the Washington Post, who said an analysis of Federal Election Commission filings through the end of December, donors from various financial institutions have given her nearly $21.5 million to support her presidential bid. Stephen, for someone who is supposedly fighting against Wall Street, doesn't this kind of seem like a conflict of interest?
It's really not. I mean, you know, take a look at any industry where there have been abuses. The good people in those industries want somebody to come in and clean it up so that the reputation gets better. And that's really what you see here with Hillary Clinton. The Wall Street folks, they've seen her plan. They know that she's going to come after some of the problems on the street. And let me say one other thing. You know, I mean, yes, there's been a lot of problems in Wall Street, but there's a lot of good people there, too. I don't appreciate demagoguery on the Republican side or on the Democratic side. Bernie constantly saying Wall Street are bad people, Wall Street are bad people. There's a lot of good people on Wall Street, too. That's really not fair to them. And, listen, we need somebody who's going to clean it up, who's going to do the right things, not somebody who's just going to kind of badmouth them all the time.
But Ford, isn't this something Sanders could use against Clinton? And do you expect her to do so during tonight's debate?
Well, let's be honest here. Every time she says something like that, remember, politics is about perception versus actual reality. If I'm her, I absolutely take the money. But this plays right into Bernie Sanders' message. Who understands the divide between rich and poor when it comes to income inequality? I do, because Hillary Clinton is nothing more than Republican light. Let's face it, Hillary Clinton is the Mitt Romney of 2016. She's basically telling Democratic voters, forget my flaws and my ever-changing positions. I'm the only one who can win in November. And by the way, minority voters, I'm the heir to Barack Obama's third term.
Yeah, nobody likes the word liberal anymore
Ford,
either
but
on the
come on,
Democratic
I mean,
side.
Go ahead, Stephen.
That's totally not fair. I mean, she's pro-health care, universal health care. She's pro-raising the minimum wage. She's pro-women's rights. She's pro-union.
Wait a minute, but she isn't talking about universal health care, is she?
Democrats.
You know what? I've
Sorry,
listened to you,
get all
Stephen,
that
for
part.
years. We're good friends. You are a diehard progressive.
Yes, we are.
And for you to sit there with a straight face and defend Hillary Clinton while you're literally holding your nose is insane. Okay?
All right, Stephen, I'll
I'm
give you a
not holding
chance
my
to
nose at
respond.
all. No, listen, I hold my nose when I talk about Bernie Sanders these days, okay? I want a liberal progressive who can actually get something done, who knows the job. I don't want somebody who's going to go in there, put all these bills up that Paul Ryan and the House of Representatives are going to just shoot down. He's selling a bill of goods here, okay? He's selling snake oil.
But Stephen, what is Hillary
Clinton's
progressive voting record in the United States Senate? If I just said, give me three of your most progressive initiatives while you were in the Senate, what would she say?
Look, she has one of the highest ratings of any Democrat in the Senate in terms of the Civil Liberties Union and all these other Democratic rating agencies. She doesn't have to explain herself to anybody as far as being a good liberal. She is one. And I think for Bernie Sanders to say this about her, is really unfair. Listen, he doesn't really have much to offer in terms of a resume. That's why he has to do these kind of things. First of all,
Stephen,
he
you're
can't get
giving
elected.
us bulletin board
Elected,
material for the
he wouldn't be able
general
to get any of
election.
his
Let him
bills
finish.
passed.
Go ahead.
He has absolutely no reason for running for president.
Ford, go ahead.
What, are you kidding me? The Democratic Party has shifted so far left since 2008. Hillary Clinton can't tell me the difference between a socialist and a Democrat. 3 months ago, she's a moderate, and now she's saying she's a progressive. I can't wait till independents basically realize what is it that Hillary Clinton stands for other than our own self-interest of being the next president of the United States.
And that's why I think she's
Well, I
running
have to
so
correct you. It was
closely.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz who couldn't define the difference between a Democrat and a socialist. And the reason why that she
Neither
couldn't
could
do that
Hillary
is
Clinton when
she's
she
already
was
been
asked the
accused
very
of
same
taking
question.
sides. She's already been accused of taking sides in the presidential race. If she'd actually defined the difference between a socialist and a Democrat, that wouldn't be very favorable to Bernie Sanders, and she would again be accused of taking sides. That's why that happened.
Stephen, before we go, I want to ask
but it was
you,
Hillary
Ben Jealous,
Clinton.
former
Don't
head of
try to
the
change the subject.
NAACP, just announced his endorsement for Bernie Sanders. Now, Sanders, as you know, has struggled to gain traction among African-American voters. Does this endorsement change the game, so to speak, a little bit?
Absolutely
might
not.
have had it
Unfortunately,
a couple
Hillary
of
Clinton
months
does
ago.
That question was directed towards Stephen. We're running out of time. Real quickly. Yes
Sorry,
or no?
I think once the voters start voting, once the debates start happening, I don't think endorsements mean as much.
And Ford, you say yes or no?
He's in trouble because she has a minority firewall, needs the entire NAACP to endorse Bernie Sanders if he wants to win.
All right, there you have it. Thank you, Ford. Thank you, Stephen. Pleasure to have you. It was a spirited debate.
That's what we would hope for, right?
Yeah, right?
Stick around, there's still more to come. We're going to talk about Ted Cruz's town hall today. J.D. Hayworth will join us for his analysis right after the break.